It was late on a Wednesday night. I had just finished another grueling day at the office, consumed by deadlines and endless phone calls. By the time I finally made it home, dinner was cold, and my wife, Melissa, was planted on the couch, her face illuminated by the hypnotic glow of her phone, scrolling mindlessly as had become her ritual. I sank down beside her, attempting to spark a conversation, but her responses were brief, robotic. Yeah, okay, sure. For weeks, I had felt an invisible wall rising between us, brick by brick. We coexisted under the same roof, but the warmth was gone, the spontaneous hugs, the easy laughter, the gentle touches that once defined us had all vanished into thin air. A part of me, the hopeful part, still wanted to believe it was just a rough patch, that things could be mended with a little effort. So that night, I mustered the courage to reach out again. I leaned in closer, my hand gently touching her arm, and whispered, "Come to bed with me." It was an invitation, not a demand, a plea for the intimacy and connection a husband and wife should share. She didn't even glance away from her screen. Without a moment's hesitation, without a shred of emotion, she delivered the blow. Use your hand. For a second, I thought I'd misheard. I stared, waiting for her to crack a smile, to take it back as a terrible joke. But she didn't. She just kept scrolling, as if she hadn't just shattered me with the most dismissive words a man can hear from his wife. This wasn't mere rejection. This was a profound, gut-wrenching disrespect. It was her way of saying I was no longer worth her time, her touch, or any effort at all. A tightness seized my chest, my throat went dry. I wanted to scream, to demand what had happened to us, but my pride held me back. I just sat there in silence, while inside, a storm was raging. My mind flashed back to the beginning of our relationship, when we couldn't keep our hands off each other. We'd stay up all night talking, dreaming, making plans. She used to look at me as if I were her entire world. Now, I was just a fixture in her life, the man who paid the bills while she treated me with the indifference of a stranger. I went to bed alone that night, staring at the ceiling, listening to the monotonous hum of the fan. The emptiness of the bed spoke volumes about the emptiness of our marriage. And the crushing truth was, it wasn't about the sex. It was about what that rejection meant, the utter lack of respect, the broken partnership, the corpse of a bond that was supposed to unite us. Her words were a final confirmation that it was dead, and I had been too blind and too hopeful to see it. Lying there, anger fused with a cold, clear certainty. I realized that love without respect is absolutely worthless. That night, she likely thought she had shut me down with one cruel sentence. But in reality, she had given me the jolt I needed. It was the moment I stopped seeing her as my partner and started seeing her for what she had become, a woman who viewed me as an ATM, a convenient roommate, and nothing more. I didn't explode. I didn't confront her. I retreated into a calculated silence, because I knew that silence would eventually become my most powerful weapon. That was the breaking point. The night my marriage transitioned from fragile hope to undeniable, painful truth. The night my wife told me to use my hand, and I silently decided that soon, she would be the one left with nothing. The next morning, I woke early as always. I showered, dressed, and left for work while Melissa still slept. I barely spoke, afraid my voice would betray the searing frustration from the night before. The echo of her words, "Use your hand," played on a loop in my mind, a toxic refrain I couldn't escape. By the time I returned home that evening, I had resolved to maintain a calm facade. No arguments, no pleading for attention, just the numb routine of our lives. Dinner was a quiet affair. She didn't ask about my day, and I didn't offer any details. But as I was clearing the table, she looked up at me, her tone casual, as if the previous night had never happened. "Hey, can you give me some money? I need about $300. I looked up confused. "For what?" I asked. She shrugged dismissively. "Just things I need. Don't worry about it." And in that moment, it all crystallized. Less than 24 hours after she had coldly rejected me, after making me feel insignificant as a man and a husband, she had the audacity to treat me like her personal teller. I set the plate down slowly and fixed my gaze on her. "Melissa, get a job." I'm not your bank. The look on her face was priceless. Her eyes widened in shock, her jaw tightened. She was utterly unprepared for this refusal. She had grown so accustomed to the cycle: reject me, then ask for money, always expecting me to comply. She scoffed, trying to regain control. Wow, so now you're going to be stingy? You can't even help your own wife. I let out a dry laugh, not from amusement, but from the sheer absurdity of her statement. Help? Helping implies mutual respect, Melissa. You don't even look at me anymore. The only time you show any energy is when your hand is out. You want respect? Start by giving some. She rolled her eyes and muttered, "You're overreacting." That word, overreacting, was a match thrown on gasoline, but I held my ground. My voice remained chillingly calm. I'm not overreacting. I'm just done being treated like a paycheck with legs. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. The truth of my words had hit their mark. She knew I wasn't bluffing. The reality was I had spoiled her, allowing this imbalance to fester by constantly giving without ever demanding the respect I deserved. She thought she could deny me as a man, but still command me as a provider. That night, the house was filled with a new, heavy tension. There was no yelling, no drama, just a thick, silent stillness. She sat on the couch with her phone, but I didn't even look her way. I sat at the table, reviewing bills, and quietly began making a mental list of everything that needed to change. It was never about the money itself. I could have given her the $300 without a second thought. It was about the principle. It was about refusing to be a resource she could tap into while offering nothing in return. The hypocrisy was staggering. She felt entitled to deny me as a husband, but expected me to perform as a provider. That double standard ended right there. When I finally went to bed, she stayed in the living room longer than usual, perhaps sulking or complaining to a friend about my newfound stinginess. But for the first time in years, I felt a shift inside. Saying no wasn't just about denying her money. It was about reclaiming my self-respect. As I lay there, I knew she wouldn't let this go easily. Melissa was the type to push until she got her way. But deep down, my decision was final. This time, she was going to learn that I was no longer her safety net. That clash her request for money met with my refusal was the first crack, revealing the vast distance between us and my own willful blindness. She thought she held all the cards. What she didn't know is that I had just changed the entire game. I used to think marriage was built on an unshakable foundation of trust, respect, and partnership. But sitting in my kitchen days after that confrontation, staring at a woman who only acknowledged me when she needed something, I realized that foundation had crumbled long ago. I had simply refused to see the cracks. Melissa and I weren't always like this. In the beginning, we were inseparable. We met at a party, and the chemistry was instant and electric. She had a laugh that could light up a room, a way of looking at me that made me feel like I was the center of her universe. Back then, she wanted me, not what I could provide. We'd talk until sunrise, sharing our dreams, our plans for a family, the life we would build together. Those nights felt infinite, brimming with promise. I remember our first tiny apartment. We ate cheap takeout on the floor and laughed, believing that one day we'd look back on those times fondly. She'd hug me from behind while I cooked, kiss my neck while I washed dishes. Those small moments meant everything. But somewhere along the line, things changed. It wasn't sudden, it was a slow decay, like a candle burning down until the room is dark. First, it was excuses for avoiding intimacy. Then, falling asleep on the couch night after night. I made excuses for her, work stress, a phase. But the harder truth was that she was pulling away. The signs were all there in hindsight, the phone always in her hand, smiling at texts, but rarely at me, the increasing girls' nights. I chose to ignore them, clinging to the memory of the woman who once adored me. But ignorance doesn't change reality, it only prolongs the pain. The hardest part wasn't just the lack of physical intimacy, it was how transactional everything felt. The only time Melissa seemed engaged was when she wanted money for clothes, nails, trips. And like a fool, I kept giving, hoping my generosity would lead her back to me. Instead, the more I gave, the less she respected me. The connection between her cruel rejection one night and her casual request for money the next day was undeniable. She had withdrawn the affection, love, and intimacy a wife should share, yet felt no shame in demanding financial support as her right. I started replaying our history, connecting the dots I'd avoided. I recalled how she admired my ambition when we dated, but maybe she just admired the security it brought. The worst part was I enabled it. Every time I opened my wallet, instead of demanding respect, I reinforced that my value was purely financial. I began to see the imbalance everywhere. When was the last time she cooked a meal without resentment? Asked about my day with genuine interest? Hugged me without an agenda? I couldn't remember. Our marriage had become a one-sided business deal. One night, hearing her laugh on the phone while I sat alone, a chilling realization hit me. I missed the respect more than the intimacy. A man can endure a lack of affection, but no man can survive being treated as disposable in his own home. I remembered my father's advice before I married. A woman can fall out of love, but if she stops respecting you, it's over. I finally understood. Love can fade, but respect is the bedrock. Without it, you don't have a partner, you have a leech. From that point on, I saw Melissa clearly. A woman who valued my money over my presence, who believed being a wife meant she could reject me emotionally, but still expect to be financed. The hypocrisy deepened. She complained about being at home, but refused to work. She wanted freedom without responsibility, the luxuries of marriage without the fundamental duties of a wife. The contract she thought was ironclad was about to be voided. That realization didn't bring sadness, it brought resolve. I wouldn't beg for respect or plead for attention. If she saw me as a funder of her lifestyle, she was about to experience life without that safety net. My silence was no longer a sign of weakness, it was a strategy. Life was about to teach her a brutal lesson. For the first time in years, my head was clear. This wasn't about saving the marriage anymore, it was about saving myself. True revenge doesn't always require drama. Sometimes, the most powerful moves are the quietest and coldest. After years of humiliation, I decided against screaming matches. My revenge would be simple, cutting her off from the two things she valued most, my money and my attention. I began quietly, without announcement. I just stopped being her provider. A few days after the $300 incident, she asked for $80 for groceries. Instead of handing over cash, I gave her my debit card. Here, buy what we need for the house. Nothing else. She returned later, and I checked the receipt. Tucked between essentials were charges for cosmetics and candles. I didn't say a word. I just took the card back and locked it away. From then on, I did the shopping. That was step 1, control the finances. Step 2 was my time. She was used to me prioritizing her schedule. I started working later, going to the gym, seeing friends, investing energy in myself, not in someone who treated me as an afterthought. When she commented, "You're working late a lot," I simply replied, "I go where I feel respected." Step 3 was withdrawing my attention. She craved being the center of my world. Now, when she got a new dress or did her makeup, I offered no compliments. My indifference was deliberate. If I was just an ATM, she was just a stranger. The cracks began to show. My calm detachment made her restless. She tried passive aggression, then attempted affection, touching my leg, trying to kiss me. I didn't reject her. I responded with emptiness, which was far more destructive. My coldness wasn't about theatrical punishment. It was about making her face the consequences of her own choices. The financial impact truly stung. With her luxury funding cut, her lifestyle shrank. No more spontaneous shopping, salon visits, or trips. When she complained, my answer was consistent. Get a job. I'm not your bank. She called me controlling and stingy, but she knew the truth. The essentials were covered. I was just cutting off the extras she felt entitled to. The beautiful part was watching her unravel. When anger failed, she tried affection again, but my hollow responses broke her spirit more than any argument could. Weeks in, she snapped. "You've changed. You're not the man I married." I looked at her calmly. "No, Melissa. I'm finally the man I should have been all along. The one who doesn't tolerate disrespect." That was the final no. My revenge was about reclaiming control, showing her the man she took for granted was gone, replaced by someone who valued his self-respect above her comfort. The lesson was clear: treat a man like an object, and don't be surprised when he disappears. The irony was, the colder I became, the more she wanted me. But by then, it was far too late. Regret doesn't always arrive with a bang. Often, it seeps in slowly, quietly, until it becomes an inescapable flood. For Melissa, it began with the small changes she noticed. She saw me dressing sharper, wearing cologne I hadn't touched in years. She watched me transform my body at the gym, shedding the weight of years of stress. She heard me laughing energetically on the phone with friends and colleagues. The man she had dismissed as a mere provider was rediscovering his vitality, but he wasn't doing it for her. First, she tried guilt. "You don't spend time with me anymore." I shrugged. "You didn't want my time when I was offering it." Then, she attempted affection, wrapping her arms around me, whispering in my ear. But the spark was dead. I would gently move away, my polite indifference speaking volumes. She felt the chasm that no amount of forced closeness could bridge. Finally, desperation took over. One night, she broke down sobbing. "I don't want to lose you. I know I've been selfish. I pushed you away. Please, give me another chance." Her tears didn't move me. Years ago, they would have. I would have comforted her, swallowing my own pain to keep the peace. But now, I saw the fear behind those tears, fear of losing the comfort and stability, not fear of losing me. I looked her in the eyes and said, "Melissa, you told me to use my hand." That night, something in me broke forever. You can't undo that level of disrespect. I won't spend my life begging for scraps of love from my own wife. She sobbed, clutching my arm. "But I love you." I shook my head. "No, you love the life I gave you. You don't love me." And with that, I walked away. That was the true start of her downfall. I continued focusing on myself, working, saving, building a future free of dead weight. Friends noticed I seemed happier, lighter. I was rediscovering myself. Melissa, meanwhile, was crumbling. Without funding for her luxuries, her lifestyle collapsed. She grew tired, stressed, and bitter. The cruel twist was that as she faded, I flourished. Other women began to notice me at the gym, at work. I felt desirable again. Melissa saw it too. She saw me texting and demanded, "Who's that?" I didn't lie. Someone who actually enjoys talking to me. The panic on her face was unmistakable. She knew she had lost all control. But my revenge wasn't about cheating or petty games. It was about my transformation. She had gambled that she could demean me and I'd always stay. She lost that bet the moment I stopped playing her game. Months later, I met Claire. She was kind, independent, and intelligent. She saw me as a man, not a wallet. We talked, we laughed, and her touch was filled with genuine desire, not obligation. I didn't hide Claire. When Melissa saw us together, her face crumbled. She saw that the man she had discarded was now valued and loved by someone else. She tried one last, pathetic grab. Cornering me in the kitchen, she whispered, "She'll never love you like I did." I laughed. "You're right. She won't. Because she actually respects me. Something you never did." Melissa's eyes filled with tears, but I felt nothing. No pity. Her regret couldn't erase the years of neglect, the denial of intimacy, the usage. She was left with the ruins of the life she took for granted, while I had built a new, stronger one. And that's the thing about regret, it's always too late. She had her chance when I was devoted and loyal, ready to give her everything. She threw it away. By the time she realized what was lost, I had already moved on, risen from the ashes of the man she tried to break. So, if anyone asks me if I regret leaving her behind, my answer is simple. No. The only regret in this story is hers, and hers alone.